Off the top, what makes San Antonio a great city to move smart cities along in that initiative is really the leadership. So we've got a lot of forward-thinking leadership at the city council level, the city leadership level, and then also in the community. And so that leadership wanting to form the collaborative partnerships with the community, with industry leaders within San Antonio is helping to move that forward. Another key component is we're not focused on technology for the sake of technology, right? It's let's tell the story. How does this benefit the community? So it's resident first, right? It's the focus on the community. It's the focus on how can we improve lives in the community that's really helping move this forward. And as long as we keep that, as the focal point for these initiatives, we're going to do great things.
The size of San Antonio makes it ideal in terms of it's got sufficient scale and for infrastructure investments, both public and private, yet it's not too big that it's unwieldy. You've got a significant base of technology, cybersecurity, other types of skill sets that are needed to deploy the type of technology infrastructure that's going to be required for the city of the future. But probably the main thing is that I've witnessed in San Antonio that is not necessarily present in all cities really around the globe is San Antonio's sense of community and everybody coming together to try to do the right thing for the community. The ability for, at times, very powerful people to check their egos at the door and sit down and talk about, okay, let's do what's right for the citizens of San Antonio. And I think that really gives them a leg up on becoming the city of the future and becoming really kind of a shining beacon for other people that want to make this happen as well.
Welcome to San Antonio. Welcome to City of the Future. I'm Chris Moyer, Senior Director of Content and Research from ZPrime. This is my wonderful colleague.
I'm Erin Hardick, Lead Research Analyst at ZPrime.
We are so thrilled to be having our second City of the Future. So grateful to CPS Energy. As we approached the second City of the Future after a very successful inaugural event in 2019, we really wanted to dig deep into the idea of why cities, why a connected community and not just a smart city. In 2018, an estimated 55% of the world's population lives in urban areas. By 2030, that is projected to grow to over 60% of people. And 1 out of 3 people will live in cities with at least 500,000 inhabitants. To understand why cities are such an important and integral part of the fabric of our society and how we can make cities more livable, it's important to understand those key trends in urbanization. What we will be discussing here at City of the Future, how we can make a more vibrant, livable, approachable city. We really took a look at what the United Nations has on their 2030 agenda for sustainable development, including the Sustainable Goal 11, and that is to make cities and human settlements more inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. Well, you might be now wondering, who's ZPrime? We all know who CPS Energy is, the municipal utility of San Antonio, but Erin, why don't you tell us a little bit about ZPrime?
Why don't we see who's in the audience first?
Oh, that's a great idea.
How many people here are from San Antonio? Oh, wow. That's a good amount. How many people here are from Austin? Just a few. So mostly a San Antonio audience.
Anybody in from out of state? Anybody not from Texas?
Okay, we see a
Right.
few
Yep.
out there.
I know that we have more than 450 people registered for this event over the next 2 days, and we have a wonderful array of individuals coming in from around the United States, Canada, but we are so grateful for so many people here from San Antonio, so many wonderful CPS employees here this morning.
But since we know a lot of these folks are from San Antonio, you may not be familiar with who ZPrime is. ZPrime is an Austin-based media research and events company, and we've been focusing on energy and utilities, trying to track technology trends and how utilities are using those technologies. And we produce research reports and infographics and interactive media based off that research that we do. And that's what ZPrime does. And we also put on these events focused on thought leadership and collaboration, solving problems through collaboration and innovation, hence why we are here at City of the Future.
Yeah.
We're also looking at mobility, cities, water, so not just energy, other things that energy touches as well. You may be familiar with one of our other events that we put on, our flagship event, ETS, which is hosted in Austin. This year it'll be March 30th through April 2nd, so that's another one of the events that we put on. That's just a quick snippet on who ZPrime is.
Yeah, I really think, as you and I go about our work, as the ZPrime team, more than 15 people strong, goes about our work, we're really focused on what's impacting the change in society, whether it's energy, whether it's water, and how that impacts cities and communities. A really key distinction that I'd like to make as we start this conversation is there are so many conversations about smart cities going on right now. But we really want to focus instead on the idea of the connected community. Cities sit at the hub and spoke of regional networks, counties, a region in a state, and states themselves. To simply focus on a smart city as opposed to broadening that conversation and thinking about the interdependencies of a connected community is not going to be sufficient to ensure that we serve all of our people, all of the businesses, all of the tourists that come into our wonderful communities. I had the privilege, I'm not from San Antonio, I'm not from Texas, to take a little walk along the Riverwalk this morning. It is such a beautiful example of how to foster a sense of community. An additional crucial element of a connected community as opposed to a smart city is really the idea of putting people first. That citizen-driven approach as opposed to a technology-driven approach. When we look at what the citizens need, the customers of CPS Energy need, the customers of of water systems need, focusing on that first as opposed to what the latest and greatest technology is going to help drive better solutions. And that leads to that secondary point. We do have a tremendous amount of technological advancement that's happened in the last more than 2 decades. This is, we are constantly striving to be a digital city, a digital utility, but as we do this, let's not forget that we are digital without ignoring the digital divide. I live in Detroit. Detroit and San Antonio have 2 of the most unfortunate instances of a digital divide where something close to roughly 30% for both cities don't have regular access and consistent access to the internet and those digital services. So how do we make sure that we serve those communities that don't always have the opportunities to interact with them? Speaking of a variety of different communities, a connected community is an equity-centric and focused on restorative solutions. It's wonderful. We have a beautiful Tesla out in front. People are putting solar panels on their roofs. People are installing Nests and home energy management systems. These are great technologies that are going to help drive sustainability for the next generation. But how do we bring clean energy and city services to people of all economic backgrounds? And how do we make sure that we are proactively restoring communities and not ignoring anybody as we build a city together? A connected community is also designed for all. Last year, we had a wonderful, at the first City of the Future, we had a wonderful presentation on making sure that we have design design centered for people of all abilities. Something like 1/5 of all of our people have some sort of altered ability, whether it's hearing loss or blindness, and a variety of others. So when we are designing places, it's essential to design for all. As I mentioned, cities are part of a regional network. Certainly I know this in Detroit, where we have a tri-county community. It's very essential to put Detroit at the center of that, but not to ignore the suburban and exurban areas as part of an economic driving force. One of the key things that we need to address and that we will have conversations on is digital resiliency. One of the great strengths that utilities have had over the last decade is a focus on resiliency in and of itself from an infrastructure perspective. But every day, it was just in the news at the end of last week in the presidential election that Bernie Sanders' campaign is attempted to be infiltrated by Russian hackers. Well, Russian hackers, the Chinese state, other non-state actors are always trying to engage and hack into our critical infrastructure systems. And so the idea of creating a digital resilient utility, a digital resilient city is also very crucial. And the last point of a connected community is locally led sustainability. While the United States is now currently pulling out of the 2015 Paris Climate Accord, more than 100 city mayors, states, and utilities have all set up goals to meet the carbon reduction and emission reduction goals. CPS Energy is actively working towards reducing your carbon footprint and should be applauded for that. The total number of those companies, cities, and states represent 67% of the United States GDP. That group in and of itself, if you separated it, would be the second largest economy in the world, larger than even China's. So it is through cities, it is through local municipal utilities that we are driving that long-term goal for sustainability. Just briefly, I want to talk about the growth in cities. In 2018, you can see that all the small blue dots are cities 1 million to 5 million. There are 543 cities around the world that have more than 1 million people in them. We talked about that, 55% of people living in urban areas right now. There are only 33 cities currently with 10 million or more. Those are considered megacities. This number is going to balloon just in the next 10 years. The 2018 data was the most comprehensive data set that we were able to get from the United Nations, and these two slides do come from the UN. There will be more than 43 cities with 10 million or more people in the growth. Most of that growth is happening in Africa and Asia. 13 cities will pass that mark in Asia. 10 cities will pass that mark in Africa. So we have to, while we are going to focus on San Antonio, we are going to focus on Central Texas, and we are going to focus tomorrow on a more national approach, that local, regional, and global approach over the next 2 days. This change is a global phenomenon, and it should be, our focus on San Antonio should be contextualized within that framework. So what are we going to actually talk about for the next 2 days? The focus of City of the Future. We can't cover everything in 2 days, unfortunately. I'm so glad Blaise mentioned the coronavirus and the flu and how we can proactively, show each other respect with a nice fist bump, but not always shake hands right now. We aren't going to be, unfortunately, talking about the challenges of healthcare, but we are going to be talking about sustainable energy, proactive city services, sustainability as a broader concept, resiliency, cybersecurity, mobility, water, education, urban design, and waste reduction. And what I would strongly encourage you is we're going to have lots of networking breaks. We're going to have lots of great conversations. This is an interdisciplinary event. Yes, we have a lot of energy people here. ZPrime came out of the energy space before we really dove into studying cities. But we have brought experts from around the country, around the region, to talk about all of these topics. So I want to bring up the founder and my friend from ZPrime, Jason Rodriguez, who's going to just talk a little bit about who we serve in utilities and in cities.
Hello, Chris. Boom.
Boom.
Erin. Boom. Big boom. Call to you. If I don't hug you, I'm a hugger. Most of you guys know. So if I don't hug you today, we're on the fist bump, and that's okay. So I wanted to start off and set the stage with a little comic relief. But it also, through comic relief, it can also tell us a lot about what we're trying to do here at City of the Future. So as we dive into the topics that Chris and Erin touched on, I think at the back of our mind, or maybe the front of our mind, we have to think of what that next generation wants to do. How many people have kids in here, just by show of hands? Okay, so then you guys know that plans go out the door when it comes to kids. But that's also good because the creativity of the future is going to be fueled by them. So when we think about Generation Y or Generation Z, I think that the key thing I want to point out is the Generation Y or the millennials, there's a lot of talk about what they're doing. You have a lot of advertisers really trying to get at them and really understand what they want and really build and design for them. But I think when you're talking about cities and how we live and how we experience life and how we experience family and those we care about most, I think it's really interesting to look at what people say what Generation Z is going to care about. They're world improvers. They're thinking very critically of what the future is, and they're going to ask the hard questions, and they're going to do things differently. So as we think about what the next energy infrastructure looks like or what mobility looks like, let's also think, well, that generation coming behind us, how are they going to try to break that? I think we've been doing a lot of community outreach lately here at ZPrime, and what we learned in working with the young students is they love to try to break things. They love to do things that we never thought they'd try to do with technology. And so with that, I wanted to set the stage, and as you have your conversations about all these different topics, definitely keep at the front of our mind what the future generations will want to do with that. And as we think about San Antonio's future, I think I definitely want us to keep that at the top of our mind. And with that, definitely want to give another thanks to CPS Energy. Paula, thank you, and all the great teams who worked so hard to put this event together. And just thank you for embracing this new idea of City of the Future. Because a lot of what Chris talks about and what Erin talks about and what you're going to hear, a lot of global ideas happening. And I think if San Antonio can lead that conversation, is leading this conversation, and we want to continue to do that as we think about over the next 2 days. So with that, welcome to City of the Future. Have a great 2 days, and I'll pass it back over to Erin and Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. And as the Gen Y millennial, I did just shave my beard and take off my SpongeBob SquarePants hat there. But Erin, you've got some great important announcements for us.
Yes, we would really like you guys to be active on social media throughout the event. For those of you who are familiar with ZPrime, you know that we are very active on social media. I hope that you saw some of that leading up to City of the Future. So if you want to tag us and follow us at ZPrime Research on Twitter, engage with us on LinkedIn as well. We're ZPrime. I suggest that you also engage with CPS Energy and your colleagues. Tweet at people you've met, tweet about things you find interesting. Not everybody was fortunate enough to be here, but I think that you can still share a lot of these messages with other folks through the power of social media. And if you're doing that, go ahead and use that hashtag COF20. Last year, we were trending worldwide, so I expect the same thing from this audience this year. If you are a speaker, the speaker miking table is going to be over there to your left, my right. Please show up 10 to 15 minutes before your panel to go ahead and get mic'd. We will have coffee and water in the back for your enjoyment throughout the day. Please, when you get some time, we have some networking breaks. There's some demo booths in the back. Go ahead and check those out. And I'm sure, as you saw on your way in, we have a few electric vehicles outside. So go have a look at those. I believe I saw a Tesla, and I'm not sure what
Nissan.
And a Nissan. So yeah, go ahead and check those out.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being part of City of the Future. Thank you for being leaders and focusing on this conversation. It is now our absolute pleasure to bring the leader of CPS Energy, the CEO, the president, a great visionary, Paula Gold-Williams. Thank you.